We now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Rev Nathaniel W Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, never good night, and certainly never, ever goodbye. I hate goodbyes, don't you? I'm Pastor Nathaniel W Martin, pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in Los Angeles, California, and the name of this program, this episode, is entitled It's Time, and what we deal with is a lot of economic inequality and environmental and justice issues as well. You try to deal with so many things. You try to limit the things you deal with, but the more you deal with it, the more you got to deal with. Ryan O'Never said that anything that is good, that's worth doing, is going to take a lifetime or will not be done in your lifetime. Therefore, we need hope. And I trust to give you hope above all other things, that you may stay in the race, stay in the fight. Don't get discouraged because the years are going by and it looks like nothing is being accomplished. After all, when Jesus died on the cross, things were not accomplished. Things were still left for other generations of believers to do. Isn't that right? Now, let's look at our marching orders, which are from the Old Testament and the New Testament, the portion of Scripture that resonate with me. I said with me, they resonate. In Deuteronomy chapter 24 and verse 14, it says, "Thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether they be of thy brethren or of thy strangers that are in thy land within thy gates." But it says, "At their day thou shalt give them their hire." That means pay them what you promise or what you agree to. "Neither shall the sun go down upon it, for they are poor, and set their heart upon it, lest they cry against thee unto the Lord, and it be sin unto thee." And those of you that have seen other episodes, you know that oppress means that's a political term. And so you're not meaning to be political, but if you cheat somebody out of their money, that's a political thing. You're oppressing them. And nobody wants to be identified as an oppressor. And so we have to realize that God expects fairness, equity, justice, righteousness, respect, and dignity at all levels of human interaction. Isn't that right? There had to be that level of interaction between Adam and Eve. And things didn't go wrong until Eve betrayed Adam in the garden. Amen, lights and walls. And so we have to be fair. We have to be equitable. We have to be honest, which means we have to practice truth with each other. Because if we don't, how are we going to be able to have a society? We have to be able to trust one another. That's a problem with politics. You can't trust what a politician says, no matter what his skin color is, or her skin color for that matter. Say amen, lights and walls. And so God is concerned that there be that degree of trustworthiness and dependability in our economic and in all of our engagements, not merely economic. We use that because that's the most salient. But we cheat each other other ways as well. And we cheat on each other. And but that's neither here nor there. But the point is that we must practice a degree of trustworthiness and a degree of dependability. Otherwise, a husband can't trust his wife, and the wife sure can't trust her husband. And so in business, in the social contracts that we used to have here in America before they tore up the social contract during the Reagan era, we have to still follow the rules of equity, fairness. And if it's anything that it's time for, it is time for the black man to receive those 250 years of unrecorded toil in the form of long overdue and long withheld and long accumulating interest reparations that will enable the people who were once known as colored and now are identified with the people of color to get their share. I don't think we should have ever, as Dr. Kevin Cosby said on at a forum on yesterday, we should never have diluted the people, the colored people, who actually were the descendants of the slave, with the people from other countries who may not have been white, but because of the fact that they came here and that the Congress of the United States under Strom Thurmond and Jesse Helms and that crowd wanted to do mischief, decided to dilute the reparations that the descendants of the slaves, the colored people, the native blacks, if you will, would normally have received, diluted that by bringing in people from other countries and identifying us with them and extending affirmative action all the way to white women, when affirmative action was originally designed to remedy the years of injustice or inequality that colored people, as we were known at that time, had experienced here in the United States of America from or since slavery. It was a great program, but some wicked, ill-will politician found a way to dilute it and would not let the Civil Rights Bill pass or the affirmative action pass unless these other groups were included. And so now we're in a condition where the so-called majority population is saying that I don't want to support these other people by giving them reparations or giving them affirmative action or giving them a leg up. And that had to be engineered. That was what you call social engineering to get us from that point to this point. And so that, my friend, still cries out for redress. Oh, yes, it does. Just because one is subtle and uses subterfuge does not make that subterfuge honest. It doesn't make it righteous. Doesn't make that subterfuge just. It remains subterfuge. It remains, therefore, immoral and really criminal, although you may never be able to bring those criminals up in the court. But I don't want them in jail. I want their money. Let me look at a little further of the book of James, chapter 5 and verse 4, before we get too far gone. Behold the hire of the laborers. Listen to me now. Who have reaped down your field. That's us. Which is of you, kept back by fraud, crieth. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. There is a God who looks at all of these social contracts and these social ills and social evils that are covered up with certain niceties of complexity, as the late Dr. King was fond of using that remark, in order to state the fact that, yeah, I cheated you, but I covered it up so you can't really get at me. But God can get at you. And the descendants of those who reaped down those fields of cotton and tobacco and who worked on those plantations, that unrequited toil, that unpaid economic bill crieth. And most of you know that following the Civil War, when freedom was declared and the former slaves were granted 40 acres and a mule, which is a very modest 40 acres is very modest, a small farm, and will give you roughly about 3 or 4 bales of cotton. But what happened was that the Northern liberals, in order to reconcile with the Southern Confederacy, the Southern secessionists who had betrayed their trust and who had committed treason, and who were forgiven for that treason by President Andrew Johnson, were also given back their land, which made the slaves landless. And we have been dealing with that legacy and the effects and the consequences and the results of that legacy ever since. And even after the 1900s, if America had been fair in its parsing out or petitioning or rationing out of the loans that were covered by the federal government. The federal government stepped in the place of the bank, in place of Banks of America, which was just getting started then with the Bank of Italy. But whatever banks were in ascendancy and in power in those days, those were the ones that would cover the loan on your house if you could qualify. Well, if the United States government is going to stand behind your loan, you qualify, baby. But who was not allowed to participate in that program were the same descendants of those same slaves. And so we were given the ghetto, whereas the white people were given the suburbs. I say white people because that's what was written in the underwriting manual, that the social homogeneity of the area was not to be disturbed, that if the white people were living there, that area was to remain white, and no one was to be able to infiltrate, at the quote, 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 infiltrate. You wanted to buy in a white neighborhood, you were considered an infiltrator. An infiltrator is the same as somebody who sneaks into a country unawares to spy out the land and go back and make a report. You were infiltrating. That's what the government of the United States of America called its own citizens who sought to have somewhere to live. You were infiltrating into these neighborhoods, to the Inglewoods and the Lakewoods and the Glendales and all of those other rolling woods all across this country, Levittown, Pennsylvania, Levittown, Rhode Island. You were not allowed to purchase or you could not qualify to get a government loan, not because of your credit worthiness, not because of your ability or inability to pay. No, those were not the factors. The factors was based upon, at that time, your perceived skin color. At that time, everybody was going for social Darwinism, and which promoted white supremacy, and that's what the whole country was basing its economic policy and its public policy. Yes, its public policy was all based upon the false science put forward by Charles Darwin. How many BBs can you put in a skull or a cranium, or the shape of a skull or a cranium? Decided or determined the intelligence of a person. And so a European cranium was different from an African cranium. So naturally the European cranium was considered to be what? The superior cranium. Now we know all of that was junk science, bogus science, the science of eugenics, the science of phrenology. But at that time, those sciences held sway. And so consequently, that formed the economic basis of the loaning policy in the banks and in business. And that's what we've been fighting against. That's what we had to fight against. That's what you fight to overcome. And we still have not overcome it, even though the mask has been pulled off of those old stratagems and those old lies, but those myths, like the myth of Santa Claus, still pervade and still are perpetuated and are still holding sway in the majority of the interchanges, social interaction, and interrelations that go on in the United States of America. Let us not forget that the United Nations rapporteur, please, ma'am, forgive me, please, sir, says in his report that the United States is a land of stark contrast. It is one of the world's wealthiest societies, a global leader in many areas, and a land of unsurpassed technological and other forms of innovation. Its corporations are global trendsetters. Its civil society is vibrant and sophisticated, and its higher education system leads the world. But its immense wealth and expertise stand in shocking contrast with the conditions, mind you, in which vast numbers of its citizens live. Let me remind you that the 0.1% of the top earners in America have wealth equal to the other 90% of the people in the United States of America. That is a staggering wealth gap, and that is social engineering at its finest. And so you have wealth, money being redistributed from the bottom to the top. Money is being lost from the bottom. It's being drained away from the citizens, much like the Russian government drained away all of its wealth from the poor peasants, and when they declared democracy and all of those government agencies became available, there were only 11 people called oligarchs who were able to purchase all of those organs of government in Russia. That was because the people had wanted to move from communism to democracy. But look what democracy has done to Russia. Why, it put people out of work, out of jobs, out of homes, out of money, out of everything. And it left these 11 oligarchs in charge of the wealth, all of the organs of production and the industry and the like. That's why the utilities and all of that are owned by under the control of 11 people known as oligarchs. They are so rich. They have so much money. And these are the people that Donald Trump is trying to make deals with, not with the country of Russia, but with the 11 oligarchs who control the economy of Russia. That's a big difference, and it's a distinction, but it's a very important distinction. Likewise, in the United States of America, you have wealth being transferred upward. Remember Ronald Reagan talked about trickle downward? We ain't trickling nothing. It's going up. We're losing money, losing funds, losing inheritance, losing valuable wealth that should stay in the family, should stay in the home, should be passed on. We're losing it. It's being transferred to the top. 0.1% of Americans. That is going to bring about a revolution in this country. Mark my words. I may not live to see it. There's going to be a reckoning. Notice, if you please, that the 18.5 million people in extreme poverty, right here, 18.5 million people in America live in extreme poverty. 40 million live in poverty. And 5.3 million live in third world conditions of absolute poverty. Now, what are you thinking about that? And that is right here in your country and my country. Country that we say, God bless America. Yes, this is the way we treat our citizens. We have the highest, get this, it has the highest youth poverty rate in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. America's not trying to pull its citizens up. It's trying to push its citizens out. And in so doing, it muffles their cries, it smothers their groans, and it hides their visibility, their ability, in other words, to be seen until you drive under the freeways or drive along the sidewalks of our cities. And then you see, I was out in Palm Springs, hot out there, 111 degrees. Palm Springs, that rich enclave out there in Indian Wells, Cathedral City, all of those very fine, rich places. But you got people, homeless people living out there in the heat of those deserts. Think about that. How we are treating the poor in America. And mark my words, with this $1.5 trillion tax cut that the Republicans are putting through, it's going to really impact the black community, which was already impacted from slavery, already impacted from Jim Crow segregation, already impacted from the FHA redlining. How many more words we got? Time we got to use the word impacted. And so you can see that it is a dark, terrible future in these United States of America for colored people. Not for people of color, but for colored people, for black people who are the descendants of the slaves. It says that the poor live shorter lives and they are sicker compared to those living in other rich democracies. Eradicable tropical diseases, in other words, diseases that could be eradicated, are increasingly prevalent. And it has the world's highest, talking about the United States of America, has the world's highest incarceration rate, one of the lowest levels of voter registration in among the Organization of Economic Cooperation of Developed Countries, and the highest obesity levels in the developed world. A lot of people are fat, but it's not healthy fat. From eating all that junk food, eating all that fried food, because when you go into the black community, that's all you're going to see. Popeyes, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and those ilk. All kind of hamburger stands. Is that right? All that fast food, all of those McDonald's, and that's not healthy for you in the long run. Not because it ain't good in the short run, but it's not healthy in the long run. It clogs your arteries. It gives you high blood. It causes you to have sugar diabetes. And so what are they doing? The society is providing you, making you pay for your own demise, in so many words. Now, these are not my findings. These are the findings, as I said, of the special rapporteur from the United Nations Council on Extreme Poverty. I'm trying to look for that name, or the formal name of that council. It dealt with extreme poverty, and the guy spent 15 days in the United States. And in those 15 days, he was able to see the contradiction and that are prevalent, and the inconsistencies in the difference between how Trump lives in the White House and how the people outside of the immediate environs of the White House are living. And this is a blot. It is a opprobrious disgrace, disgraceful opprobrium. Both of those words mean the same thing almost, and that's how they should be used to describe how the richest country in the world can treat its own citizens. We need a Marshall Plan here in the United States of America that will get people out from under the freeways, get people up off the sidewalks, get those that cannot work because of whatever conditions, social or physical, into shelters, into homes, and those that can work should be getting into situations of employment environments where they can pull themselves up. But it's going to take federal help. There is no self-made man in America. Those are all myths. Those are all lies. The man that said, I bought this house and blah, 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 he got a federal FHA loan. He got the underwriting from the federal government, from the VA, from the GI Bill, from the New Deal. You see, when you tell millennials to work hard, all you're doing is giving them an egg and telling them to make a cake, but you're not giving them the fact that they need the other ingredients to make that cake. I want to thank the Reverend Kevin Cosby for giving me that illustration, that hard work in and of itself is not going to avail you anything if the conditions and the circumstances are not right. As I've said on other occasions, if it was about hard work, you could make it, then every slave would have been a millionaire coming out of slavery. But they were not millionaires. The other people inherited wealth, 400 years of wealth, 250 years of wealth, and we inherited 250 years of poverty. And it didn't stop there. Like I said, 1865, 1877, all the way to 1968. So we have had all of these years of inherited poverty, whereas on the other side, they've had inherited wealth. And then everybody wants to jump up and ask, well, how come you didn't make it? How in the world are you going to make it when everything is stacked against you? The fact is that we have had to make it in spite of all the things that have been against us. As we wrap up this program, we want to encourage you to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, do everything that you can to see that this broadcast gets out, because we need to get the truth out. And if we don't get it out, nobody's going to get it out. And we've got to stay on the battlefield. We need reparations. You got a right to reparation. The fact that we've been denied reparation is an injustice. Remember, you don't need no internship. If they don't want to pay you, don't work for them. God bless you, and may God keep you until we see you again. Trust that all may yet be well, and keep up your prayers, because prayers changes things. I'm out.